In February 2022, Russian columns rolled across the border expecting to take Kiev in 72 hours and install a puppet government before the West could blink. 3 years later, they are still grinding through muddy fields, getting shredded by American HIMARS rockets and German Leopard tanks, while losing 1,000 men a day in human wave attacks. With over 500,000 casualties on both sides, front lines that barely moved despite months of fighting, and artillery duels consuming more shells per day than entire World War I battles, this is not a question of who wins anymore. It is a question of how long Ukraine can keep bleeding the bear dry before the Western weapons pipeline runs out and the mobilized conscripts stop showing up. Let's take a brutally honest look at what is actually grinding away in the frozen trenches right now. A desperate mix of cutting-edge NATO hardware rushed from storage depots against waves of Soviet-era rust pulled from 1960s boneyards, backed by hypersonic missiles, and an endless supply of bodies. Do not laugh just yet at those rusted T-62 tanks Russia is pulling from museums, because right behind them are Iskander ballistic missiles and Ka-52 attack helicopters that have turned entire Ukrainian brigades into burning scrap metal. Western tanks. The Steel Cavalry, if there were an award for most anticipated weapon delivery, it would go to the Leopard 2. Germany finally broke decades of policy and shipped these beasts to Ukraine, giving them genuine modern armor for the first time. The Leopard 2A6 rocks a 120mm smoothbore gun that can punch through any Russian tank at 2,500 meters, with composite armor that laughs at Soviet-era shells. The next one, Leopard 2A4, the older variant without the upgraded armor package. Poland and other nations donated dozens of these, and while they are less protected than the A6, they still outclass anything Russia fields in terms of fire control and optics. Then the Leopard 1A5, ancient tanks from the 1960s pulled from storage and refurbished. Germany is sending these because they ran out of Leopard 2S to donate. The armor is paper-thin by modern standards, but the 105mm gun still works. Up next, Challenger 2. Britain sent 14 of these heavily armored beasts featuring Chobham composite armor that has never been penetrated in combat. The rifled 120mm gun is unique among NATO tanks and deadly accurate at extreme range. Now the M1A1 Abrams. America finally delivered 31 of these 70-ton monsters after months of training Ukrainian crews. The 120mm smoothbore and composite armor make it virtually immune to frontal hits from T-72s. The problem is the gas turbine engine drinks fuel like a drunk sailor. The next one, M1A2 Abrams, the newer variant with better electronics and thermal sights. America is holding these back for now, but Ukraine desperately wants the upgraded models. Then the Stridsvagn 122. Sweden's version of the Leopard 2 with additional armor packages. A handful were donated and immediately deployed to the hardest-hit sectors. Up next, PT-91 Torty, Poland's upgraded T-72 with better fire control and reactive armor. Over 200 were donated early in the war, giving Ukraine much-needed armor before Western tanks arrived. Now the M84, Yugoslavian tanks donated by Croatia and Slovenia. Based on Soviet T-72 design, but with improvements, these filled the gap while waiting for Leopards. But here is the brutal reality. Ukraine has maybe 200 Western tanks total across all types. Russia has over 3,000 tanks still operational despite losing 500 plus in combat. The math does not work. Ukrainian armor, the homegrown steel. Before Western tanks arrived, Ukraine had to make do with Soviet-era equipment and whatever they could capture. Just look at the T-6-4BV. This is the backbone of Ukrainian armor, with over 800 operational at war's start. Upgraded with Contact, 1 reactive armor, and 125mm guns, these tanks have been fighting since day one. The next one, T-64BM Bullet, the modernized variant with better optics, fire control, and Nij reactive armor. Ukraine's indigenous upgrade program produced about 100 before the war stopped production. Then the T-72, older Soviet tanks with 125mm guns serving in reserve brigades and territorial defense units. Less capable than T-64, but still functional when properly maintained. Up next, T-80BV, gas turbine-powered tanks that can hit 70 kilometers per hour on roads. Ukraine operates about 100 of these fast movers for rapid counterattacks. Now the T-84 Oplot, Ukraine's most advanced indigenous tank with 1,200 horsepower engine and duplet explosive reactive armor. Only a handful exist as Russia's invasion stopped production at the Kharkiv tank plant. The next one, BMD-2, airborne fighting vehicles mounting 30mm autocannon and AT-5 missiles. Light armor but useful for reconnaissance and supporting infantry. Then the BMP-1. Thousands of these Soviet infantry fighting vehicles haul troops with 73mm guns and AT-3 missiles. Outdated, but still grinding away. Up next, BMP-2, the improved variant with 30mm autocannon and better armor. These form the backbone of mechanized infantry battalions fighting across the front. Now the BTR-4 Bucephalus, Ukraine's indigenous 8x8 wheeled APC mounting 30mm cannon, and modern electronics. Production continued during the war to replace losses. Western infantry fighting vehicles, the armored buses. When Ukraine's Soviet-era BMPs started getting shredded, NATO stepped up with modern replacements. Just look at the M2A2 Bradley. America sent over 300 of these tracked fighting vehicles, mounting 25mm Bushmaster cannons and TOW missiles. The Bradley can shred Russian BMPs at 3,000 meters while its armor stops 30mm rounds. The next one, CV-90. Sweden donated dozens of these modern IFFs with 40mm autocannons and excellent optics. The firepower and protection completely outclass Soviet designs. Then the Martyr. Germany sent over 100 of these 1980s era IFSFs, mounting 20mm cannons and Milan missiles. They are old but still more advanced than BMP-2s. Up next, M113. America and other nations donated hundreds of these aluminum armored personnel carriers. They offer no real protection against RPGs, but give infantry mobility and machine gun support. Now the Max Pro MRAP, American mine-resistant vehicles designed for Iraq providing convoy protection and troop transport. Over 200 serve in rear areas where mines are the main threat. The next one, Bushmaster, Australian donated armored vehicles with excellent mine protection. These transport troops through contested areas where IEDs lurk. Then the Striker, American 8x8 wheeled vehicles mounting 30mm cannons or 105mm guns. A few dozen serve in Ukrainian service providing mobile firepower. Up next, AMX-10RC, French wheeled tank destroyers with 105mm guns. Lightly armored, but fast and mobile for flanking attacks. Now the Rosomak, Polish 8x8 APCs providing protected transport for mechanized infantry. Artillery, the king of battle. Not tank duels, but artillery slugfests consuming thousands of shells per day. Just look at the M777. America and Canada donated over 100 of these 155mm towed howitzers that can hit targets 30 kilometers away with precision-guided Excalibur rounds. The next one, M109 Paladin. American 155mm self-propelled howitzers provide shoot-and-scoot capability. Dozens are grinding away firing hundreds of rounds per day. Then the Panzerhaubitze 2000. Germany's premier self-propelled gun can dump 5 rounds in 30 seconds at targets 40 kilometers away. The most advanced artillery Ukraine operates, but only a dozen were donated. Up next, CAESR. French truck-mounted 155mm gun that can fire and relocate in under 2 minutes. Its mobility keeps it alive against Russian counter-battery fire. Now the Crab. Polish self-propelled 155mm howitzer, based on British AS-90 design. Over 50 serve Ukrainian artillery regiments. The next one, Zuzana II, Slovak 155mm wheeled self-propelled gun with automated loading. A handful provide mobile firepower. Then the M270 MLRS. American tracked multiple rocket launchers firing guided rockets to 70 kilometers. These terror weapons devastate Russian logistics hubs and command posts. Up next, HIMARS, the truck-mounted version of M270 that became Ukraine's most feared weapon. Over 40 HIMARS trucks fired GMLRS rockets with pinpoint accuracy, destroying Russian ammunition dumps 80 kilometers behind the lines. Now the M142 HIMARS. The official designation for these game-changing systems that forced Russia to move supply depots back 100 kilometers from the front. The next one, RM-70 Vampire. Czech multiple rocket launchers providing area saturation fires. Dozens supplement American HIMARS. Then the 2S1 Gvozdika, Soviet 122mm self-propelled guns still serving in Ukrainian units. Thousands of rounds fired daily from these aging systems. Up next, 2S3 Akatsiya, Soviet 152mm self-propelled howitzer with 20-kilometer range. Older but functional for mass fires. Now the 2S5 Gyatsint, Soviet 152mm towed gun with 28-kilometer range. Long barrels provide extended reach. The next one, 203mm self-propelled guns, firing 110-kilogram shells. A handful remain operational for bunker-busting missions. Then the D-20, Soviet 152mm towed howitzer from the 1950s still grinding away. Thousands of rounds consumed daily. Up next, D-30, Soviet 122mm towed gun, serving in territorial defense units and reserve brigades. Now the M101, American 105mm howitzers from World War II, donated by various nations. Ancient, but still functional for close support. Air defense, the Steel Umbrella. Russia tried to achieve air superiority in the first 72 hours and failed catastrophically. Ukrainian air defenses turned the sky into a graveyard. Just look at the Patriot. America donated multiple batteries of these advanced SAM systems that can shoot down aircraft, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. at ranges exceeding 150 kilometers. The next one, IRIS-T-SLM, German medium-range air defense with 40-kilometer range. Multiple batteries protect critical infrastructure and cities from Russian missile strikes. Then the NASAMS, Norwegian Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile System, using AMRAAM missiles. America donated several batteries providing medium-range coverage. Up next, SAMP/T, Italian-French long-range SAM system, comparable to Patriot. One battery protects key assets with Aster 30 missiles. Now the Gepard, German self-propelled anti-aircraft guns mounting twin 35mm cannons. Over 40 were donated and have proven devastatingly effective against drones and cruise missiles at close range. The next one, Crowtail, French short-range SAM system protecting tactical formations and airbases. Then the Aspide, Italian SAM system with 15-kilometer range supplementing other air defenses. Up next, S-300, Soviet long-range SAM system Ukraine operated since independence. Aging but still functional with 150-kilometer range missiles. Now the Buk M1, Soviet medium-range SAM with 35-kilometer range forming the backbone of air defense before Western systems arrived. The next one, Tor M1, Soviet point defense SAM protecting key positions from low-flying missiles and aircraft. Then the OSA, Soviet mobile SAM with 15-kilometer range. Old but still serving. Up next, Tunguska, Soviet combined gun missile system mounting 30mm cannons and SA-19 missiles, effective against drones and helicopters. Now the Strela 10, vehicle-mounted short-range SAM for tactical air defense of ground formations. The next one, Igla Manpads, shoulder-fired surface-to-air missiles distributed to every infantry unit. Thousands have been fired bringing down helicopters and jets. Then the Stinger, American MAN pads donated by the thousands. These heat seekers have destroyed hundreds of Russian aircraft. Up next, Starstreak, British MANPA pads with unique laser-guided dart design, extremely fast and difficult to evade. Now the Piorun, Polish MANPA pads based on Igla design. Thousands donated for infantry air defense. Ukrainian Air Force, the outgunned few. Ukraine's Air Force was never going to win air superiority, but they have stayed alive against overwhelming odds. Just look at the MiG-29. Ukraine operates about 40 of these Soviet fighters, upgraded with Western avionics, and able to fire Western missiles. They conduct hit-and-run strikes and air defense missions. The next one, Su-27. Ukrainian flankers provide air superiority missions with R-77 missiles. About 30 remain operational after heavy losses. Then the Su-25. Soviet attack aircraft conducting close air support with rockets, bombs, and gun pods. Dozens remain flying low-level missions under Russian air defenses. Up next, Su-24. Soviet strike aircraft dropping bombs on Russian positions. Vulnerable to SAMs but still flying missions. Now the MiG-29MU2. Upgraded variants with better radars and weapons. These are Ukraine's most capable fighters. The next one, F-16. Finally arriving from NATO after years of delays. The first batch of 1020 Fighting Falcons gives Ukraine jets that can actually challenge Russian fighters with AMRAAM missiles. Then the Su-27P, air defense variant optimized for interceptor missions protecting Ukrainian airspace. Up next, L-39 Albatros. Czech jet trainers pressed into service for light attack missions. Cheap to operate, and expendable. Now the Mi-24 Hind. Soviet attack helicopters conducting anti-armor and close support missions. Dozens remain operational despite heavy losses. The next one, Mi-8 HIP. Utility helicopters for transport and logistics. Hundreds serve across the military. Then the Mi-2. Light helicopters for reconnaissance and liaison missions. Up next, UH-60 Blackhawk. American utility helicopters donated for medevac and transport operations. Now the Mi-14. Naval helicopters conducting anti-submarine and maritime patrol missions. Drones. The new kings of war. This conflict proved drones are the future of warfare. Just look at the Bayraktar TB2. Turkey's medium-altitude combat drone mounting laser-guided bombs became a symbol of Ukrainian resistance. Dozens destroyed hundreds of Russian tanks and artillery systems in the early months. The next one, MQ-9 Reaper. America quietly supplied a handful of these advanced drones for reconnaissance and strike missions, deep behind Russian lines. Then the Switchblade 300, American kamikaze drones, for attacking infantry and light vehicles. Thousands were donated and used extensively. Up next, Switchblade 600, larger loitering munition designed to destroy tanks and armored vehicles. More powerful warhead than the 300 variant. Now the Phoenix Ghost, mysterious American kamikaze drone, specifically designed for Ukrainian needs. Details remain classified, but hundreds are in use. The next one, Warmate, Polish loitering munition for precision strikes against point targets. Then, the RQ-20 Puma, small reconnaissance drone for tactical intelligence gathering at company level. Up next, Scan Eagle, American reconnaissance drone providing battlefield surveillance. Now the Leleka 100, Ukrainian indigenous reconnaissance drone produced domestically during a war. The next one, Fury, Ukrainian attack drone mounting anti-tank grenades for close-range strikes. Then the R-18 Octocopter, commercial drone modified to drop grenades and anti-tank munitions. Thousands operate across the front in improvised bombing roles. Up next, DJI Mavic, Chinese commercial drones press-ganged into military service for reconnaissance and grenade dropping. The most numerous UAV in Ukrainian service. Now the Bayraktar Akinci, Turkey's heavy attack drone with longer range and bigger payload than TB2. A few operate conducting deep strikes. Anti-tank weapons, the tank killers. Modern anti-tank missiles have proven deadlier than tanks themselves in this war. Just look at the Javelin. America donated over 7,000 of these fire-and-forget missiles. The top attack profile has destroyed over 500 Russian tanks by hitting weak top armor. The next one. NLAW, Britain and Sweden donated over 5,000 next-generation light anti-tank weapons. These predicted line-of-sight missiles are simple to use and devastatingly effective at close range. Then, the Stubna P, Ukraine's indigenous anti-tank missile, with 5,000-meter range. Produced domestically before and during the war, thousands are deployed. Up next, TOD, American wire-guided missiles donated in large quantities, old but reliable with proven tank-killing capability. Now the Sky, Ukrainian laser-guided anti-tank missile based on Soviet Konkur's design, effective against older Russian armor. The next one, Kornet, captured Russian anti-tank missiles pressed into Ukrainian service, ironically effective against the tanks they were designed for. Then the Milan, French anti-tank missiles donated by various European nations, wire-guided but effective. Up next, Panzerfaust III, German disposable anti-tank weapons providing infantry with light armor-killing capability. Now the AT4, Swedish disposable rocket launchers donated by the thousands for close-range tank defense. The next one, M72LAR, American disposable rockets from the Vietnam era, still effective against light armor and bunkers. Then the Matador, Israeli-Singaporean disposable weapon for bunkers and buildings, excellent for urban warfare. Up next, RPG-7, Soviet recoilless gun captured from Russian forces and turned against them. Simple and effective. Now the RPG-22, Soviet disposable rocket providing infantry with basic anti-armor capability. Now, let's look at what Russia brings. The Steel Avalanche. Here is where the nightmare begins. Russia might be losing equipment at catastrophic rates, but they have reserves Ukraine cannot match. Just look at the T-90M, Russia's most advanced tank with 125 mm gun, relict explosive reactive armor, and modern fire control. About 100 operate on the front with more being produced monthly. The next one, T-90A, earlier variant without the upgraded armor package. Several hundred serve in elite units. Then the T-80BVM, upgraded gas turbine tanks with improved armor and weapons. Fast and lethal in capable hands. Up next, T-80BV, older variant still serving frontline units. Gas turbine allows rapid acceleration and high speed. Now the T-72B3, the backbone of Russian armor with thousands operational. Upgraded T-72s with better optics and contact. 5 reactive armor. The next one, T-72B3M, further improved variant with additional upgrades. Mass-produced to replace losses. Then the T-72B, base model without modern upgrades serving in reserve formations and mobilized units. Up next, T-72A, even older variant, pulled from storage to replace catastrophic losses. Minimal protection against modern weapons. Now, the T-64BV, Ukrainian-designed tanks that Russia captured or had in inventory. Hundreds lost in combat. The next one, T-62M, ancient tanks from the 1960s pulled from long-term storage because newer tanks ran out. The 115 mm gun struggles against modern armor. Then, the T-55, World War II-era design incredibly still appearing on the battlefield. Russia is scraping the absolute bottom of the barrel deploying these museum pieces. Up next, BMP-3, modern infantry fighting vehicle with 100 mm gun and 30 mm autocannon. Superior firepower to older BMPs. Now the BMP-2, thousands serve carrying infantry with 30 mm cannons and ATA-5 missiles. The next one, BMP-1, obsolete but still used in mass quantities. The 73 mm gun and AT-3 missiles are hopelessly outdated. Then the BTR-8-2A, wheeled APC with 30 mm cannon providing mobile infantry support. Up next, BTR-80, older variant without upgraded weapons serving in second-line units. Now the MTLB, multi-purpose tracked vehicle used as APC, command post, and ambulance. Thousands operate across all formations. Russian artillery, the steel rain. Russia learned from World War II that artillery wins wars, and they brought everything. Just look at the 2S-19 MCA, modern 152 self-propelled howitzer, with 29-kilometer range. Hundreds rain shells on Ukrainian positions daily. The next one, 2S-3 Akatsiya, older 152 self-propelled gun still serving in quantity, reliable if outdated. Then the 2S-1 Avdiivka, light 122 self-propelled gun for direct fire support. Thousands remain operational. Up next, 2S-5 Gyatsint S, long-range 152 gun reaching 33 kilometers, deadly against Ukrainian artillery. Now the 2S-7 Malka, massive 203 self-propelled gun firing, 110 kilogram shells, used for bunker busting and terrorizing cities. The next one, D-30, towed 122 howitzer serving in massive numbers, simple and effective. Then the D-20, towed 152 gun providing long-range fires. Up next, 2A-36 Gyatsint B, towed 152 gun with 28-kilometer range for counter-battery missions. Now the 2A-65 MSTA, towed 152 howitzer, supplementing self-propelled variants. The next BM-21 Grad, the most numerous rocket system with 122 rockets and 20-kilometer range. Thousands operate firing area saturation salvos. Then the BM-27 Uragan, heavier 220 rockets reaching 35 kilometers, devastating against concentrated targets. Up next, BM-30 Smerch, heavy 300 rockets with 90-kilometer range and cluster warheads. These obliterate Ukrainian positions. Now, the TOS-1A Solinspec, thermobaric rocket system mounting 24 220 rockets. The fuel-air explosives create overpressure waves that kill everything in bunkers and buildings. Russian air defense, the no-fly zone. Russia deployed the most advanced air defense network in history, which is why Ukraine's air force barely flies. Just look at the S-400 Triumph. Russia's premier long-range SAM with 400-kilometer missiles can shoot down anything Ukraine has. Multiple battalions create overlapping coverage. The next one, S-300V. 4. Army variant of the S-300 specifically designed to destroy aircraft and ballistic missiles. Then, the S-300PM, older variant still forming the backbone of air defense, with 200-kilometer range. Up next, Buk M3, medium-range SAM with 70-kilometer range. Dozens of batteries protect ground forces and infrastructure. Now the Buk M2, earlier variant with 45-kilometer range still widely deployed. The next one, Tor M2, point defense SAM, protecting tactical formations from drones, cruise missiles, and aircraft. Then the Pantsir S1, combined gun missile system with 20-kilometer missiles and twin 30 cannons, designed specifically to protect S-400 batteries from low-flying threats. Up next, Strela 10M3, mobile short-range SAM for tactical air defense. Now the 9K33 OSA, older mobile SAM still serving in quantity. The next one, 2K22 Tunguska, self-propelled gun missile system, protecting armored columns. Then the Verba manpads, modern shoulder-fired SAM replacing older Igla systems. Up next, Igla S, upgraded MAN pads distributed to every infantry unit providing basic air defense. Russian Air Force, the overwhelming numbers. Russia operates the world's second-largest air force, and they are using it. Just look at the Su-35S, advanced fourth-generation plus fighter with AESA radar and long-range missiles. Dozens conduct air superiority missions. The next one, Su-30SM, multi-role heavy fighter for strike and air defense. Hundreds operate across theaters. Then the Su-34, dedicated strike aircraft with side-by-side seating and heavy armor. These conduct deep strikes into Ukraine with guided bombs. Up next, Su-25SM3, upgraded attack aircraft conducting close air support despite heavy losses to MANPADs. Now the Su-24M, old strike aircraft still flying bombing missions. Vulnerable but numerous. The next one, MiG-31BM, interceptor designed to shoot down cruise missiles and aircraft at extreme ranges with hypersonic missiles. Then the MiG-29SMT, upgraded fighters providing air defense and light strike capability. Up next, 2.95 milliseconds, strategic bombers launching cruise missiles from Russian airspace at Ukrainian cities and infrastructure. Now the Tu-160, supersonic strategic bomber carrying cruise missiles for standoff strikes. The next one, Tu-22M3, medium bomber conducting strikes with conventional and anti-ship missiles. Then the Ka-52 Alligator, attack helicopter mounting anti-tank missiles, rockets, and 30 cannon, the most advanced rotary wing platform Russia operates. Up next, Mi-28NM, attack helicopter competing with Ka-52 for supremacy. Both conduct tank hunting missions. Now, the Mi-2435 Hind, old attack helicopters still flying close support missions despite heavy losses. The next one, Mi-8AMT Shi, armed transport helicopter conducting assault insertions and fire support. Russian strategic weapons, the escalation. This is where the terror begins. Russia has weapons Ukraine cannot defend against. Just look at the Iskander, short-range ballistic missile with 500-kilometer range that can carry conventional or nuclear warheads. Dozens have struck Ukrainian cities, killing hundreds. The next one, 9M723, ballistic missile. The Iskander's actual missile designation flying at Mach 6, making interception nearly impossible. Then the Kinzhal, air-launched hypersonic missile traveling at Mach 10 from MiG-31K fighters. Patriot shot down 6 in one night over Kiev, proving they are not invincible, but they still get through. Up next, K-47M2, Kinzhal, the full designation for this feared weapon carrying a 500-kilogram warhead. Now the 3M22 Zircon, naval hypersonic missile designed for ship killing, now used against ground targets. Mach 8 speed makes interception extremely difficult. The next one, Kalibr cruise missile, sea-launched weapon fired from ships and submarines in the Black Sea at targets across Ukraine. Over 1,000 have been launched. Then the K-101, air-launched stealth cruise missile fired from 2.95 and 2.160 bombers. Low radar signature and 5,000 kilometer range allow strikes from Russian airspace. Up next, K-555, older cruise missile variant still in service for infrastructure strikes. Now the K-59, tactical cruise missile for precision strikes against hardened targets. The next one, K-2232, massive anti-ship missiles repurposed for ground attack. The K-32 modernization extends range beyond 1,000 kilometers. Then the S-300 surface-to-air missiles, used in ground attack mode. Russia fires SAMs at Ukrainian cities when cruise missiles run low. Up next, Shahed 136, Iranian kamikaze drones Russia produces under license as Duran. 2. Thousands have struck Ukrainian power infrastructure. Now the Orlan 10, small reconnaissance drone providing targeting data for artillery and airstrikes. The next one, Lancet, loitering munition designed to destroy artillery and air defense systems. Highly effective and produced in quantity. Then the Zala Qubla, another loitering munition for precision strikes against point targets. Infantry weapons, the Mud and Blood. When the artillery stops and the tanks withdraw, the outcome is decided by men with rifles in trenches. Russian infantry carries the AK-1, 2. The latest Kalashnikov variant with improved ergonomics and rails for optics. Gradual replacement of older AKMs across the force. The next one, the AK-74M. The 5.45mm assault rifle serving as standard infantry weapon. Millions are in service and stockpiled. Then the AKM, old 7.62mm Kalashnikov, pulled from storage and issued to mobilized units. Reliable, but heavy recoil. Up next, the AK-74. Earlier 5.45mm variant without modernization serving in reserve units. Now the RPK-74M, light machine gun providing squad automatic fire with 5.45mm ammunition. The next one, PKM, belt-fed 7.62mm machine gun serving as medium machine gun at platoon level, reliable and devastating. Then the PKP Pecheneg, modernized PKM with improved barrel and ergonomics. Up next, KROD 12.7mm, heavy machine gun for vehicle mounting and long-range suppression. Now the SVD Dragunov, semi-automatic sniper rifle for designated marksmen engaging targets to 600 meters. The next one, SV-98, bolt-action sniper rifle for precision engagement beyond Dragunov range. Then the SVDM, modernized Dragunov with better optics and suppressor capability. Up next, Orsis T-5000, modern precision rifle chambered in .338 Lapua for extreme-range sniping. Now the AS-VAL, integrally suppressed assault rifle for special forces conducting clandestine operations. The next one, VSS Vintores, suppressed sniper rifle firing, subsonic 9x3, 9mm ammunition, for silent kills. Then the AK-12K, compact variant for vehicle crews and paratroopers. Ukrainian infantry fights back with a mix of Soviet weapons and Western donations. The AKM and AK-74 still dominate because ammunition is plentiful and soldiers know them inside out. Up next, M4A1 carbine, American 5.56mm rifles donated to elite units and special forces. Modern optics and accessories make them popular despite ammunition supply issues. Now the M16A4. Full-length American rifles supplementing M4s in infantry units. The next one, FN SCAR. Belgian rifles used by special forces for their modularity and reliability. Then the HK4-16. German rifles in limited service with elite units. Up next, Tavor X95. Israeli bullpup rifles donated in small quantities for urban warfare. Now the AK-101103. Export Kalashnikovs firing NATO 5.56mm or 7.62mm for ammunition compatibility. The next one, PKM. Ukraine uses the same medium machine gun as Russia. Captured weapons supplement stockpiles. Then the M240B, American 7.62mm machine gun donated for sustained fire support. Up next, FN MAG. Belgian machine guns serving the same role as M240 in Ukrainian service. Now the RPG-7. Both sides use this ubiquitous anti-tank weapon for bunker busting and vehicle destruction. The next one, Carl Gustaf M4. Swedish recarless rifle firing multiple ammunition types for versatility. Then the Panzerfaust III. German anti-tank weapon supplementing rocket launchers. The brutal reality, nobody wins. Here is the truth that politicians do not want you to hear. After 3 years of fighting, tens of thousands of square kilometers changing hands multiple times, and over 500,000 casualties, the front lines have barely moved from where they started. Russia controls roughly the same territory they captured in the first 3 months. Ukraine cannot win this conventionally. Russia has 3 times the population, 10 times the artillery ammunition production, and endless reserves of old equipment to throw into the meat grinder. Every Ukrainian brigade that gets destroyed takes months to rebuild and retrain. Every Russian division that gets decimated gets replaced in weeks with mobilized conscripts and pulled equipment. But Russia cannot win either. They expected to take Kiev in 3 days. 3 years later, they are still grinding through the Donbass, losing 1,000 men per day for a few kilometers of destroyed villages. The economic sanctions have crippled their ability to produce advanced weapons. Western equipment keeps flowing to Ukraine at a rate Russia cannot stop. This is World War I. Trenches stretching hundreds of kilometers, artillery duels, consuming more shells per day than major Cold War battles. Human wave attacks getting shredded by machine guns and mines. Gains measured in meters and paid for in hundreds of lives. Neither side can break through. Neither side can accept defeat. Ukraine survives because NATO keeps sending weapons. Russia sustains the offensive because they have bodies to feed into the grinder and political will to accept casualties that would destroy any Western nation. The Leopards and Abrams get destroyed by Kornet missiles and artillery. The T-90 milliseconds get killed by Javelins and HIMARS. The Su-35s get shot down by Patriots. The F-16s get destroyed by S-400s. Western tanks were supposed to be game changers. Ukraine lost dozens in the 2023 offensive without breaking through Russian minefields and artillery kill zones. Russian equipment was supposed to be superior. They have lost over 2,500 tanks in 3 years, proving numbers do not equal quality. Air power was supposed to decide wars. Both air forces barely fly because air defenses are too deadly. This war proved that modern conventional warfare between peer opponents is mutual suicide. The weapons have become so lethal that offensive operations are nearly impossible. The side defending always has the advantage, because drones spot every movement and artillery destroys every concentration. Tanks cannot advance because anti-tank missiles are everywhere. Infantry cannot attack because machine guns and cluster munitions turn no man's land into a killing field. Ukraine cannot push Russia out without NATO troops and massive casualties. Russia cannot occupy all of Ukraine without millions of casualties and economic collapse. So they grind. Artillery pounds positions. Drones drop grenades into trenches. Infantry assaults in small groups getting annihilated for 500 meters of scorched earth. Then next week the enemy counterattacks and retakes the same ground at the same cost. The only winners are the weapons manufacturers watching their stocks soar, while Ukrainians and Russians die by the thousands. The only losers are the young men being thrown into the meat grinder, on both sides, fighting for meters of mud that will change hands 5 more times before the war ends. Sometimes, there are no stilettos or clever strategies. Sometimes war is just 2 nations bleeding each other until one runs out of blood first. This is that war. This is the reality underneath the propaganda and the maps with arrows. This is what the weapons are actually doing in the frozen hell of the Eastern Front.